listening to the 14th Source for all geeky and nerdy news and discussion, which means that you're listening to a podcast.
For all intents and purposes.
I am D. Bethel.
And I'm Andrew Asplund.
And we are your two overeducated, codependent nerd hosts, bringing you the things that we like to talk about, but filtered through inquisitive and critical lenses occasionally. In the episode for Friday, March 29th, 2024.
Yeah, we almost went all of March without a fucking episode, right?
You know what? That's our new goal. Let's do no shows during April. I bet we can't do it. I bet we can't do it.
No, it's funny. Actually, I will say, I think the first week we skipped because we just had stuff come up. The second week this was actually fun. I messaged you earlier. I'm like, hey, we got to get a start on this thing. And you're like, I'm out of the country.
Yeah.
I was like, oh. And I had plans to record some funny, like, oops when I hear this week or some short thing. Actually, I reached out to a friend of the show, Taylor, and at the time he was like, well, how about Thursday? I'm like, well, that's too late. And I thought I had this master plan, but as it ends up last week, something happened. Something happened that derailed my efforts to record an episode.
Does this lead into a potential discussion about our respective weeks in geek?
It does, as it ends up.
So, Andrew, if you don't mind sharing, what was your...
Andrew, if you don't mind sharing, why didn't you record the fucking episode? Well, as it ends up, Stardew Valley released the newest patch 1.6. And it was it'd been discussed since, I think he mentioned he was doing it a year or 6 months ago. And he said, "Oh, it's going to add some." Originally, it was just going to add support for modders, and then of course, it said, "Oh, this patch got bigger than I expected." He said, he being Concerned Ape, aka Eric Baron. So yeah, he basically he did a patch. It's a 0.1 patch, right? It went from 1.5 to 1.6, which naturally means it added a whole crap ton to the game. Sure. And the reason I'm not going to go at great length to talk about it because, it's, anyone that cares about Stardew already knows about it. What I'm actually more really focused on, I mean, yes, they added quite a lot of content, right? Nothing super big, nothing like a whole other island like they did with 1.4 or 5.
Okay.
But this added, several new holidays, new events, a bunch of new items, new crops, a lot of new dialogue for the townsfolk. And actually some really people are noticing oh wait, these characters are now saying these things and they never, for example, when certain events happen, the other townsfolk now talk about it, right? Like, oh, did you see how Bloody Ball had this happen? Where they never
dynamic dialogue?
No, it's just that, for example, one of the characters, Shane, is one of the town's alcoholics. And he gets to the point where you save his life because he basically is he's hovering on drunken suicide. And normally after that, everything just kind of goes back to normal. And he starts to say, gosh, I need to drink less. Now the other people are like, oh, did you hear what happened to Shane? Oh my gosh, I hope he's doing okay. Right.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, kind of stuff like that. Or if when you try to start dating a character, there's more dialogue. People say oh, you're dating my daughter /son /grandson /whatever.
Yeah, slightly dynamic dialogue. Yeah, sure. It sounds kind of interesting.
And I guess because the game never really had a lot of that, it feels a lot more wow, it's a community, right?
Even more reason to leave the real world behind and just focus in on your digital life. On your farm in
Stardew Valley. But also, what I really wanted to say about it, what I think is fascinating is, Concerned Ape. He's got the same developer disease that Hello Games has, right? The folks that make No Man's Sky. With this idea that they released a game. Now with Stardew Valley, it was already popular when he released version 1.
2016.
But yeah. He's basically a almost one-man show, right? I think he's got a few people to help him out, but it's primarily him. And since then I think
No Man's Sky was also 2016, by the way.
Apparently this is the year of just games that keep on winning.
The givers of the gaming industry.
Right. And every time he does a 0.1 patch increase, he adds quite a lot to the game, to the point where if you played Stardew 1.0 versus Stardew 1.6, you'd be like, holy crap, there's multiple DLCs here, right?
Right.
Except he does it all just kind of for free. But actually, I will say it's the game still it attracts a massive following. They actually so the patch released last week on Tuesday, and or Wednesday, I forget. Whatever. And anyway, it was the first day. It was the first day of spring. That's all I know.
Okay.
Because of course the game starts on the first day of spring.
The farming game. Yeah.
They released it. They said it was within 24 hours. They peaked at the highest number of concurrent Stardew Valley players on Steam. It's something like 17,000 people or something playing at once, which is it's quite a lot for a game made by a kid from Tacoma, Washington. I think he went to UW Tacoma, right? Like, wow, it shows how much the game has influence. The game has, and the fact that while he's talking about releasing this new patch, he's going on tour. There's a concert going on tour around the country, performing the music from the game that he also wrote. Right, because he did everything. It's this idea of like this. Not only is it this game where they keep adding content, kind of unprovoked, right? He's just like, I was doing a patch for this, and I thought I'd add a bunch of stuff. Like, all right, dude.
So, is he working on another game, or I guess he doesn't need to? Like, he's made enough money to die. Right, without worrying.
I don't think it takes a lot of money to die, as it ends up.
Well, no, I mean to live his life to death without having to worry about paying bills. So he can do whatever he wants, literally. But
so I think what he did, he did announce like a year or two ago he's working on another game that looks like it's different, but aesthetically similar. It's Haunted Chocolatier. He announced it. He showed some screenshots. He said it'll come out someday. But he did also like in the last year say, he went back to Stardew Valley to work on this 1.6 patch.
Right.
And honestly, he doesn't need to really do anything. He's doing it because he wants to do it. I really everything. The reason I want to mention all the fact that it's the reason why I literally didn't record an episode last week. It's such a different aesthetic, or not a design philosophy. I think it's what's notable is in the same week or so, right? Dragon's Dogma 2 came out. Capcom released, and it's kind of getting
incredible character creator.
It's apparently I keep seeing people. Here's a character I made with the Dragon's Dogma 2 character creator. But the idea that it has apparently like this microtransaction illness, where there are microtransactions for things that people would think are something you should just be able to do. Like start a new game,
right?
So it's such a contrast, such a difference.
Well, I remember Hideo Kojima like fantasizing about, I want to make a game where if you die, the actual like ROM corrupts, and you'd have to go buy a new copy if you want to play a new game. I'm like, let's remember the testing limit of what a game is, aren't we?
It's an experience, Dan. It's an experience, and the experience is fuck you. You paid for this game.
What he's describing is called life, and I don't need to gamify that more than it already has.
Yeah, there's not a lot of escapism in you died in the game, you're now dead. Like, ooh,
yeah, right. Yeah. It's called The Matrix, I believe, actually.
So yeah, I don't know. I guess there's something fun and like nice about the fact that there's this game out there, and they're not the only ones doing this, but
right.
It just feels like, wow, I'm glad there are people out there that are just making these games, and they're adding to them. And here's the thing. If he turned around and said, I'm going to do a DLC for Stardew Valley, like, yeah, people would buy it, right? He could sell a $10 DLC that adds a new island and a blue and whatever, right?
Here's a new DLC that's made completely by AI.
And actually, I want to make a slight comparison to Klei, another company where they I've been playing Oxygen Not Included, which is one where they did a DLC for it, and then they said, yeah, we're just gonna do free updates every quarter or so, and they've done that now, and they're like, you know what, actually there's enough interest in this game, we're gonna go back to doing DLC for money, which again most people are like, it's about time, right? Like we would like to pay you for more comprehensive DLC.
So funny you say Klei, and I realize in hindsight that when people think Klei, they think of Don't Starve and they think of Oxygen Not Included. I'm like, oh, Klei, Shank, and Mark of the Ninja.
Right, and I'm like, oh, the people that make Oxygen Not Included. Yeah,
yeah.
We're
I totally forgot that they just like they had like debt settling success with all their with especially Don't Starve, right? And Oxygen Not Included is also like a huge flagship for them. I'm like, I remember their weird like side scrolling beat 'em up Shank that was kind of janky but also kind of cool. And Mark of the Ninja is an incredible game if you haven't played that as well.
Yeah.
Did they do Invisible Ink?
Is it called?
Yeah, they did. That game was great too. I was too dumb for it, but it was fun.
I would say before I go into a totally unrelated tangent, I would actually say there's a little short about them, a no clip documentary where they talk to I think like the founder or one of these guys, and it is this kind of idea that they just like wanted to make games.
Yeah.
And they did, and they've never, they never sold out. They never, they never got peak and shitification. And they're just making this, and it's clear that they're still doing fine. You worry, at some point, but like, it doesn't seem to bother them. Like they just keep making games and supporting the games that they've made in the past, mostly,
Although they did in 2021, the company Tencent did acquire a majority stake in the company.
Oh, did they?
Unfortunately. But Klei would remain in full control of its products. It would just help them gain reach in the gaming market in China specifically. But, I mean...
Who doesn't Tencent own?
Right. At least it's not the Embracer Group, because that turned out to be a shit show.
Right. Well, it's just, but doesn't Tencent own like a majority of Epic?
Tencent owns kind of a majority of everything, and that's kind of the problem.
Anyway, so yeah, that's I wanted to talk about that. That's my week in geek. Is it?
Didn't Tencent just help a former president pay a bond? No, sure.
I mean,
they made Griftlands. Klei made Griftlands. That game was great, man. I loved that game. I did not get I got far, but like it's a roguelike kind of thing. That game is great. I haven't thought about the game. I need to go play that game. Anyway, end of the show.
All right. And if you have any questions, listeners, right?
I totally forgot about that game. That game was great. Oh.
And it's weird because actually, I think the founder guy, he even talks about in the video, because they talk about like when they made Shank, and then they made Mark of the Ninja, and then Don't Starve, and then Don't Starve together. It kind of was this process where they, at some point, they even say like, one thing he says is he wants this game where every time you play it, you have like you can learn something from it.
Right. Right.
I will say that like. Oxygen Not Included, 100% is this game where I put some perverse number of hours in it. And it's not a fast game, like it because it's calculating all this heat transfer and fluid flow dynamics.
Sure.
But like it's the idea that I'm still playing the game, and every time I'm like, oh wow, there's this new thing I didn't think of, this way to build a thing,
Right.
And I think that's what they really do. That they've specialized in.
Yeah, Griftlands is really much in that vein as well. Yeah, what an interesting game. I can't believe I let that game kind of slip out of my awareness. Just kind of like it being a roguelike. I think that's what they're kind of describing as roguelike gameplay. And like where there's a persistence that allows you to improve from run to run, not only in terms of just like numbers and but also but gaining knowledge. Like knowledge is the loot.
Right. And that's why I would, because like Oxygen Not Included, it's not a roguelike at all. It's more like a strategy game or whatever, right? It's or a colony sim, but it's this idea, it's like with people that play Civilization 6, you like, or any Civilization game, you learn new things by playing it a lot. And like, oh wow, here's this new thing I never considered. Here's this new type of build or arrangement of cities or arrangement of features. So
such as Stardew as well.
I mean, Stardew's the kind of thing where like people, there's so many options now. You're like, oh, what shall I try to build? What kind of farm do I like? What crops do I want to specialize in? With a certain amount also of, and what do I want to do with this game? Do I just want to play through it? Do I want to try to race to a certain goal? There is always the kind of the standard goals of like perfection, which is you get basically everything, which I've never gotten. It's on my list. Maybe this time, right?
It's on your list to do everything.
Yeah,
or to get everything.
To get everything, right? Because that's one of the things that once you get like what they consider all the things, there's a special scene where basically you have like you
finally get to kiss somebody.
No, you do that a lot already if you want.
Nice, nice.
Yeah, well, because you get married and stuff, to a person. There's like one of 20 people.
A person,
and at least one thing that's not a person.
There we go.
Yeah.
That's inclusivity.
Yeah, well, it's Krobus for you, man.
Isn't it, though?
You don't really marry him. You move in with him. It's very weird. Anyway, he's like some sort of weird shadow monster. It's very strange. Anyway, but that's what I want to talk about. That's essentially my week in geek from circa 2018. Dan, what about you?
Well, actually, we're going to kind of keep on the same path here, talking about roguelikes and learning by doing. You know, the motto of our alma mater.
Yeah, go Poly.
So, like, as Andrew insinuated, I went out of the country for spring break / anniversary. And I'm like, I'm going to take my Nintendo Switch, which normally is just always in its dock. I always play it on the TV. Like, oh yeah, this is a portable thing. I downloaded some games. There was a sale. But I've been hearing a lot about a game called, let me look at the pronunciation here, Balatro, which is... How do I explain this? It is I wrote it down. It is a poker-themed roguelike deck building game.
Oh, yeah, makes total sense.
Right? The all caps thing, or at least the first item in that list, should actually be roguelike. It is a run-based game that happens to be also a deck building game. I think those are the two key words that we need to focus on. And I think a key point to focus on is that it's poker themed, in that it's a game built around building
about
poker hands. Ooh, that sounds bad. But hands you would play in a game of poker. Pairs, two pairs, straights, flushes, all that stuff.
I understand.
Yes. You see, we were going down a road that was uncomfortable.
That we cannot come back from.
No, so to speak. I was initially turned off when I started hearing about it, but I heard a lot of people talking about this game, Balatro. And just a little bit of context here. It's similar to Stardew Valley. It's developed by a one-man team, or one-person team, I should say. I don't know if it's I don't know the gender of the person. Doesn't matter. But the developer is someone called Local Thunk. And it's kind of a one-person show. They did the development, and they did all the art for it. I think they outsourced the audio, unlike Stardew Valley. They're not as cool as Concerned Ape. Is that the name of the person? Yeah. But it's a really addictive game. The only thing you need to know about poker is what the hands are. But you're not playing poker. Basically, the only thing aside from the use of it sounds weird now, Andrew. Aside from the use of poker hands, the only thing they do is really kind of appropriate poker terminology to mean other things. So before I quickly get into that, I just want to explain how the game works. Basically, the goal of a run is to get through 8 levels. Each level is made up of 3 rounds. And it's here where they replace more traditional terms with poker terms. So each level is an ante. So you're trying to get through 8 antes. And each round is called a blind. So there's 3 blinds per ante, or 3 rounds per level. The first round is called the small blind. The second round is called the big blind. And the last round is called the boss blind. And that's the basic setup. Other than that, all you're doing is that you have a deck initially of, I bet you can't guess, 52 cards. And it is the standard, card deck. When you start the first small blind of the first ante, the first run, you deal a hand, and you basically just, can you make a hand out of the cards that you've been dealt? So you pick a pair, and you get some points out of it, or what they call chips. And what each blind is, what each round is basically you need to play enough hands to meet a score. So let's just say when you start a new game, the first blind of the first ante, or the first round of the first level, has a score you have to meet of, let's say, 300 chips. And so if you play a pair that has a certain amount of base chips and a multiplier, and then it adds to that the numerical value of the cards you played. And you just kind of build on the score until you get to or exceed, in this case, that 300 points. And obviously it escalates from blind to blind. Things get interesting when you start acquiring jokers, which are basically modifiers. There's basically an endless amount of jokers you can get. Each one has its own sort of modifying capabilities. Like, hey, all the odd numbered cards are going to have a multiplier bonus. Or whenever you play a face card that scores, you get an automatic bonus 30 chips added to your score. That kind of stuff. And that's where the strategy kind of comes in. You can anytime you add jokers to your sort of inventory, you can sell them, you can add new ones, but you can only have 5 jokers at most. And it's just kind of how can you maximize the amount of points you get from the hands you play, with the goal of completing 8 rounds, or as they call it, 8 antes. Basically, getting through 8 rounds of 3 battles each with the score going up and up and up and up. The one last kind of quirk to just normal gameplay is that every boss blind has its own modifier. Like it debuffs an entire suit of cards, and so they won't score anything even if you play them. Or like you have to beat this round in one hand, or you can only play one type of hand based on whatever the first hand is that you play. Stuff like that. It's interesting, and it's randomized from run to run and from ante to ante. And as simple as it kind of sounds, it's really awesome. I found myself, because I was in Acapulco, Mexico, which is 2 hours ahead of Pacific Standard Time. So I was kind of waking up early. Well, I also wake up early because I have sleeping problems. Waking up in the middle of the night, I'm like, I could play a couple rounds of Balatro, sorry. And 2 hours later, I'm like, I guess I should go back to bed. Because you're always kind of, you're playing against the dealer, for lack of a better word. Even though they're not playing a hand, you're just trying to maximize all these modifiers and stuff like that. I find it is very engaging. There's also other modifiers you can get. They have different. So in between each round, you basically go to a storefront, not microtransactions or anything like that, but you also earn money from each round.
Wait, in a game about poker?
Right. And you can spend that money on buying new jokers, for example. You can also buy these other modifier packs. There's a couple different packs you can buy in the storefront. One basically can have you modify the cards in your deck to have different qualities, enhanced modifiers, or give you more chips, or can be used as wild cards, that kind of stuff. And then other modifying cards you can buy are ones that basically level up the score you earn from each hand. So you can basically level up how many chips you get when you play a pair or a straight and stuff like that, among other things. But those are kind of the most common ones. And you're kind of slowly assembling your build based on what options you have available to you between rounds, with how much money you have and what cards are basically being offered in that storefront at that time. So you're always kind of shifting and moving and adjusting as you go. It seems more complicated than it actually is, but even I, with my dumb brain, am able to wrap my head around it, and am finding it endlessly engaging. And basically, the roguelike element of it is like the more hands you play, the more points you score. Over time, you unlock new Joker cards or new what they call vouchers, which I won't go into. It doesn't matter. But you kind of get things by playing the game. Oh, it's an interesting, weird game that I on all fronts. I don't play poker. I don't have any hand for poker. But again, it has nothing to do with poker aside from just the aesthetics. And I'm loving it, which is a problem because it's distracting me from wrapping up Sea of Stars. And I really want to get that done. But one of the interesting things that came out of this is like, so are you aware of Peggy? The European...
Yes, the European game. I was going to make a joke that apparently Balatro is so dangerous for the youth that it's rated 18 plus.
Yeah. It was originally rated 8 plus, but then it contains prominent gambling imagery and has been delisted from a lot of stores in the EU. And they're appealing that because they consulted with the Peggy, saying we're not poker and we're not gambling. There's no money on the line aside from buying the game. But they're like, no, you said the word ante, so you're gambling. But as far as I know, in the United States, it's widely available across all platforms, and I highly encourage it.
It's interesting. I find that when I was looking it up, one of the things that was pointed out is that it was developed in Love, which is the
so was I, baby.
A game development engine that's often used I've seen it used in educational places, but also it's common on like itch.io.
Oh, sure.
Because it's very approachable. Mm-hmm. So it's this idea that like, oh, it's like a real game that's made with, it's not to say that it's not functional. It's just, it's not a system intense, programming or engine. I just find it fascinating that like everyone's talking about it. Like, oh wow, it'd be like someone saying, "Oh, I made this really popular game," and it's a website,
right.
Which is it's kind of like Wordle.
Yeah.
It's like Wordle was a very basic web application, and it blew up the internet. Right? It's that kind of thing.
Tapping into the zeitgeist, right? Like it. I found a source that with the numbers saying that within 8 hours of its release, it made $1 million. I think it's an interesting point.
It's a lot of bucks.
Yeah, real money, not gambling, not gambled money.
Wait, I thought you said this game wasn't about real money.
No. The developer made the money, Andrew, from the cost of the
stealing
game.
It from people through gambling.
Yes, from children. They stole it from children with their parents' credit cards. But no, it's done very well, which is always cool to see with like an indie game, a small game, like with Stardew Valley and dozens of other games we've talked about over the nearly 10 years that we've been doing this show. Right. Like it's always cool. That's always a cool story to see the little guy get a spotlight and have it be a spotlight on a really good game. Check out Balatro. I don't think there's any wrong or right way to say it. I was going off of Wikipedia's pronunciation, or Balatro. Which is apparently that's the ancient Roman term for I guess Latin term for like a joker or a fool.
Oh,
which since the game is
the ancient Roman word for poker.
Fool or joker, that's the ancient Roman word for Dan Bethel.
Oh,
hey yo, bada bing, bada boom, funniest man on the planet. So if you, dear listeners, have any thoughts about the topics we discussed this week, feel free to leave your thoughts as comments on the page for this episode at forallintents.net.
You can also post your comments or engage in conversations with other listeners on our Facebook page.
You can find us on other social media as well, specifically the places that Andrew and I frequent, which means you can find me on Instagram at dbethelcomics, and you can find Andrew on Mastodon at profounddark at dice.camp.
And while you're at our website at forallintents.net, you can also take a look at our YouTube page, which you can find by clicking on the link in the corner that says YouTube, or you may already be listening there because we do simulcast our show on YouTube. Simulcast and YouTube. If you do listen on YouTube, please feel free to like and subscribe, or as the kids like to say, ring that bell.
We use 2 tracks of music for our show. One is called Disco Medusi, the other is called District 4, both written and performed by Kevin MacLeod of the Clan MacLeod, immortal swordsman, graph paper enthusiast, and musician extraordinaire. You can find his music at incompetech.filmmusic.io, and that's all licensed under the Creative Commons 4.0 attribution license. If you like the show and like to help us out, the best way to do so would be to subscribe to the show using whichever podcasting service you happen to use. What would help us out even more, though, would be to leave some sort of review, whether a text review or using their proprietary metric will help spread the word to new potential listeners through the magic of algorithms. Too much time has gone by, Andrew, where we have not even uttered the words Doctor Who. Oh, but there's a thing coming. Yeah, there's apparently, Andrew, this is actually probably the more interesting thing. Season 1 is coming this May. I did not write down the release date. I think it's May. Yeah, they released a trailer for the new season of Doctor Who, and they are titling it, at least that's the title of the YouTube video, Season 1. Which I guess is not completely inappropriate because since the relaunch in 2005, they've been called series. Right. And now they are either, if they're actually moving to a season-based model, which is a little different in the UK to what a series-based model is, that's up for debate because the original show was a season-based model. It's left to be seen, but like, or if is it just aesthetic and like, no, we are ostensibly starting over, especially with it being developed in conjunction with Disney Plus, airing day and date on Disney Plus and all that stuff. But that aside, that trailer looks fun. Yeah, no, it looks fun. I'm excited to see it. I think it feels like it might be a little bit different, but also the same.
You know, like they're doing something a little bit different, but it's kind
you
of
just described Doctor.
You know, and actually, I was talking to someone where this discussion that, you know, Shuti Gatwa is one of these guys. He's young, but you know, like we kind of already have this good sense that he has pretty expansive acting chops.
Yeah.
And so maybe there's kind of like, wow, this could really be, you know, he could do a lot with it, right? So we'll see.
We will definitely link that trailer in the show notes if you want to take a look. Season 1 of Doctor Who. Brand new show you've never heard of. Season 1 coming to a Disney Plus near you. All that being said, even in that trailer, it's not like RTD is leaning away from the legacy of the show. Hell, even in that Christmas special, he was referencing the Flux and previous iterations. So I think some people online are like, why are they fucking erasing everything that's come over the last 19 years? It's like, they're not. It's just a way to get attention. It's what Marvel and DC do when they create new number ones. It's not a number one. It's just a marketing tactic.
It's just marketing. Well, I suspect part of it's because of Disney's involvement.
For sure.
Yeah.
So until you see new Doctor Who, dear listeners, I'm D. Bethel.
And I'm Andrew Espin.
And for all intents and purposes,
that was a podcast.
Hey, so I have important news about life, universe, and everything.
What?
Well, according to Three Body Problem, everything is terrible, darkness falls, and being open to others only allows for your own destruction.
None of that is
and
news.
I love you very much.
I love you too.
No, that's not news either.
We have a two-body problem.
Oh.
No, we have a two-body solution. That's what a marriage is.
Well, now we have a title.
Yeah.
Hey, I got your favorite thing.
My big
it's
black
water.
Cup? Oh. So tasty too.
Well, I will see you when you return from the valley.
All right, I'll see you later, bye-bye.
There's only darkness and growth in the valley.
So far, he's the only one providing outtakes for this episode, so... Andrew?
Yeah?
Go to bed.
What?
Go to bed.
That's mean. Why are you telling me that?
Because you're tired.
How do you know that?
You told me.
Oh, that's true.